This is just a record of my phone conversations or text messages with Zoe. I'm having trouble getting them off the phone. This is probably the easiest way, and this sort of goes through what happened with most events. My mum was asked to call around and speak to lawyers and get them to call me. I received a call off my mum saying she had hired a lawyer. It was this young lady, Zoe, apparently. She had gone through a whole speech with my mother regarding how if I went to legal aid I would end up in jail and everything else, and no, because legal aid were inefficient and she could defend this. Basically got my mum to agree to whatever, and paying her. My mum started chasing up money. She swindled money out of my dad by saying I'd agreed to this, and then ended up calling me and saying that she knew I wasn't going to be happy, but she had hired a lawyer. So I kind of went, at least I'll get to speak to Zoe. Zoe will be representing me. First conversation, I think, was email or a brief phone call. I was asked to be sent the files because obviously can't do much without all the legal files. So that was within 10 days because my court hearing was on the 18th of February. She sent this. I'm able to contact you on this number now. That was my reply. Straight after, yes, this phone's always on me. If I go through my call records, I don't think I got a call from her in a great hurry. I just remember everything being a bit of a dawdle, and she seemed to want to avoid talking to me. I included the police prompt cards that the DPP submitted as evidence at the hearing. If you need me to call, I still need to use the other number till I have my phone returned, because from the very start I was mentioning this was the important part, and this was the bit I needed a lawyer for, was getting my phone back, because I had evidence of the police attempting to commit perjury and the judge assisting them. And that, you know, this, because of her intervention, left me getting railroaded down a path with the courts and that protecting themselves, the police covering everything up they wanted to, and nothing, no questions really being asked of anything, and no proper fair trial. No problem. I hope it can help. Thanks. Hey Stu, I'll call you in a half hour. Cheers. Which I think I got a call off her secretary, not her. Oh, this is the 8th of March now. Yeah, this is when Pradeep Pai called to try and threaten me. I think you've got this file in the folder for the Legal Services Commission. But this is the one where Pradeep Pai called me and asked me if it was a system-generated call. 3rd of April. And she got that the 7th of April, because I've been trying to call her. I've spoken to Ahmed. This was after my court case. He indicated that there has been some confusion regarding the handling of my case. It would have been good to have discussed this prior to court, because from what I've been told by my father, Zoe just came out of court when everyone got there. She had just wandered in herself and chose to go ahead. She had stuff she wanted to do down in the city and had to be back by lunch, according to her. So she didn't handle my case properly or wait to try and speak to me, even though she's tried to say I was an hour late for court. I was like maybe 10-20 minutes late, and given there were roadworks and everything and hold-ups, yeah, this is all about road safety, isn't it? In my case, it would have been good to have discussed this prior to court. I honestly didn't think this matter could get so ridiculously out of hand with no justification or explanation as to why. Could I ask if you requested the evidence or my phone? And this was her response to that. She's chosen to avoid calling me or speaking to me since the call with Ahmed. And Ahmed tried to hide behind a secretary who's sitting in the background trying to avoid talking to me until I just asked. I wanted to speak with him directly because I had trouble with the secretary's accent. Stuart, not exactly sure what you're referring to here as being ridiculously out of hand. I guess the fact that I asked the police a simple question, they wouldn't provide a reading and then went about charging me for everything else and lying in court and making up charges, and I guess, she knew the whole story. As your case has not yet been run or heard. Yeah, because she adjourned it and moved it to Melbourne, which involved automatic guilty pleas for everything, apparently. As your case has not yet been run or heard. In regards to speaking to you prior to court, like I said, your matter actually hasn't had its actual hearing yet. Additionally, however, any confusion regarding the handling of your case prior to the last court mention was due to the fact you arrived almost an hour late after the time I asked you to please be there. Yeah, she was on about 8:30. Now, I had 4 kids to get organised and everything, and I'm dependent on other people driving me around. Yeah. Time. I asked you to please be there so we could discuss and prepare. She couldn't do this over the phone and talk to me. This is what I don't get. She made everything so difficult. She knew I wouldn't have let her walk in a court and represent me. I could have called an adjournment and I wouldn't have moved it and pled guilty. And prepare. Of that, you were then 25 minutes late for the actual start of your court listing. Yeah, because she lodged it as me being there when I wasn't there. She rushed it through. And I had to proceed without you present. No, you did not. You could have held off. I discussed at length with your family what we would have to do in your absence, as I need you to please remember that although we do agree with you that the police's treatment of you has been unacceptable and very wrong on a number of occasions, there are explicit elements to putting forward and proving a not guilty plea to your various charges. As discussed with you afterwards, with the evidence you have, it is not in your best interest to proceed on a not guilty plea for all of the 3 charges. It's too late. She's already lodged this and we didn't discuss this prior to. She even said that. As I discussed with you afterwards, this is after court. After she went into a court without talking to me prior. She has phones and stuff, but doesn't. This is why I'm frustrated, James. I have done this just for you, and it's taking time out of my day, sorry, and I know yours, but this is what I find irritating. On a guilty plea for the 3 charges. Now, yeah, suddenly there's 3 again, where most of the charges got chucked out in the first place. The seatbelt one got struck in court after they'd tried to prove it failed. Of the 3 charges, as although unfair, the offences were still committed. Now, these and their penalties can be mitigated by appealing the severity of the sentence on the grounds of the police officer's poor treatment of you numerous failures, and unnecessary aggression and or abuse of power. See, she's acknowledged this from the evidence she's seen. This does not, however, make you not guilty of the offence. Now, this is what I would have said, is that I intended to challenge the offence, and I'd expressed that to her because I didn't see how it was an offence to ask an officer for a second reading. But that's getting off the point. Back to this. And that is what I tried to explain to you would be in the best to address all the issues and get you the best result. Now, what she said at court was what she was doing was aiming for something, and if we gave her more money, we could sue the police. And she was aiming to sue the police on something, but I don't know what the hell that was. It sounded like a contrived scheme, and I wanted my case dealt with. I wasn't planning on whatever the hell her and Ahmed had discussed in my absence and come up with without consulting me. I do, however, believe the not guilty plea stands for correct for the second charge of failing to comply with the direction, which your recording evidences you did not drive the distance they have alleged. Please understand, because they alleged a specific distance so they could get me for it, because otherwise it would have just been me pulling my car over instead of letting them pull it over. They have alleged, please understand, that the only confusion has arisen when you were not present for us to have a final discussion regarding the best way forward. Please also remember that there was a large amount of information provided to us for review in a very short time period for the first mention, so why not just adjourn it? And we have not been following the details of this case for the 18 months that you have, and thus had to familiarise ourselves with it very quickly, without speaking to me properly, and make an assessment of the evidence in line with the version of events provided to us by you. Although she went off of a lot of my mum's stories, and my mum had nothing to do with this, knew next to nothing about it. She was just asked to call a lawyer to get a lawyer to speak with me. Speak with me like a consultation prior to hiring. As such, we have arrived at the conclusion of what is going to get you the best result, and to raise the police officer's unacceptable behaviour as mitigation of your actions. Well, if you get treated like crap like I did, of course you're going to respond a little differently and not be so polite with someone, especially when they're being rude, arrogant, and not explaining themselves. I hope this provides some clarification. Now, mind you, this is after I've already spoken to Ahmed on the phone and suggested that I don't want them looking after my case anymore, and I want my files returned, which he swiftly said he would do. I'll show you those texts after I'm done with Zoe's. I appreciate the explanation. However, my question was in relation to the evidence I have requested. As I have stated, the reading supplied is fraudulent and not what the evidence would state on the evening. Oops. Don't save. So that was me to Zoe. Because I've been asking her over and over again that I need my phone because it has the officer lying in court. But she avoided this issue, which was quite important. If she was planning on doing some great thing after the case, it would have made sense to get my phone back, which I'm still fighting with to this day because the police obviously don't want to... Oh, is this the second part? Oh, it might be a continuation of that. Unfortunately, this is not a defence. I don't know what that is. It's cut the word off. She would have the original copies of this because I'm sure Zoe has nothing to hide, as she says later. Unfortunately, this is not a defence, and the reading on the device would only be relevant if there were, for an example, you had not had any alcohol and were adamant about this. Although I do know from experience breathalyzer machines can be fudged. I had 2 readings come up on my interlocker from a previous offence. When I had it, the court acknowledged them that they were caused because of people eating Vegemite. Now, you can literally get a false high reading from Vegemite. There's a number of other substances and ways that you can mess with it to get false readings, but the way the officer behaved, she was avoiding this. Okay, unfortunately, this is not a defence, and the rating on the device would only be relevant if, and were, for example, you had not had any alcohol. Pardon me, sorry, I haven't been feeling well. I woke up sick this morning. And you had not had any alcohol and adamant about it and could provide some sort of evidence to that end, even though these devices aren't 100% accurate. And returned a preliminary reading that was widely faulty. Well, the bit that Zoe's missing is now I've suddenly got service reports that didn't exist previously. They've made them up out of thin air. There's a lot the police need to answer for, but I've sent this off to IBAC to be ignored by them. And now it's going to probably be ignored by the Vic Inspectorate, I guess. Sorry, James, for the whinge, but this is a big problem with the system, and protecting lawyers like Zoe, she's not helping anyone. She's taking advantage of people. And returned a preliminary reading that was widely faulty, which, when the device is faulty, it delivers a reading that is off the scale. This was also not the case, as you have already admitted to having had some drinks in the day. Mind you, she didn't speak to any of the witnesses, try to get them or anything. No effort on her behalf to try and talk to anyone. There were 2 other people in the vehicle. They had been drinking and I was driving them. So some alcohol would have been present in your system regardless. Where a device has not been calibrated within 12 months, an allowance is provided for variation of the accuracy, which is a small margin of which I don't know why she couldn't call and discuss this, but again, it's like she avoided calling me, of which, if applied to your case, would still render you well over the legal limit. No. Thirdly, even where a device is faulty or inaccurate and deemed unreliable for the purpose of a breath alcohol content test, the officers are allowed to make a professional judgment. This is what this was all based on, and he wasn't behaving professionally that evening, on whether they believe a person is under the influence of alcohol, which in your case, clear evidence in your own recording. Your words are heavily slurred and would be determined sufficient to require you to submit for a secondary breath test. Now, you could provide a secondary one and show me the reading on the side of the road. That's what I was trying to discuss with the officer. I can talk quick at times and I slow my speech. I had 2 strokes when I was a kid. So the way I'm talking, this is the way I talk. I fumble words every now and then, even reading this. I sort of have a struggle. So, in that, and yeah, considering some of the crap Zoe came up with later, trying to claim bipolar and that, I don't know what her gig was, trying to plead that I'm mentally ill. I'm not mentally ill. I asked a sound question. What was the reading that you obtained? Because I knew that I couldn't be anywhere near the reading. Now I've had the police tell me that they can bring you in on any indication and have you to a station. And the only way you could get that reading is having a lawyer on the side of the road. Now, the problem with that is, why don't they explain that? Why didn't Officer Pye turn around and say, well, it's policy that we don't give you that reading, you'd need a lawyer here. And then I'd say, well, we can get a lawyer here because I want to get the reading. I believe he's a dodgy officer. I believe most of them are at sale from one of the experiences I've had and the way they handle stuff. They can twist a case to favour whatever direction they wish, and I've watched them do this on a number of occasions. If in fact you believe this was incorrect, then you... Whoops. Oh, damn. Lost my place. Fortunately, inaccurate, and if you, where's a little big if? If in fact you believe this was incorrect, then you would, there we go, and it continued on, I'm assuming. Well, the rest of the message didn't come through. This is the great man. So once a police officer talks to you, you lose your human right to question and become subject to their personal whim, and the law supports this. Can the case even be heard beyond a magistrate's court? Because this is the important bit that I was trying to, this is why I wanted a lawyer. I know that the court system can run itself out once, and you get tired of that. They need to be brought to question. Falsification of evidence and calling saying I missed my bail, even though I hadn't, and he had to check it, and sign in over Easter without even attempting to walk to the front desk. This officer's totally incompetent, this is the point, and she should be helping to highlight this if she had any interest in protecting my rights, which is what I believe a lawyer is supposed to be there for. I'm not sure, James, you could correct me on that if I'm sort of wrong. Didn't even walk to the front desk to check the sheet that was prepared for him. This incompetent clown should be fired. If asked of if his call was this is a spell texting. No, be fired. He asked me if his call was a system generated thing. He had no justification, no justifiable reason to initiate the request in the first place. Can you explain why police are so secretive in regards to the PBTs? This is all stuff that I've been trying to talk to her prior to her walking in a court, announcing that she represented me. She had no friggin' right, mate. Like, sorry, this is what I'm so livid about. Regards to the PBT, regarding as it is counterproductive when dealing with the public. If we ask you, if he turned around and said you're over, I'd be like, what? Yeah, I'd let him take me to a station. Then I'd sue them for wasting my time. And now her response, Stuart, literally none of this has anything to do with the guilt of you driving without a licence. Now, this is a totally different matter she's on about. The police, and she knows this, Peveril lured me to a police station to give me a no licence paper and then laughed his ass off because I got stranded in Maffra with kids. He knew I had kids with me, he knew I was the only carer for them, and he just sat there smirking, going, you can't drive home. And I said, you've left me no choice. I had children to get back. He didn't sit there and go, well, we can drive you back or anything. He just sat there smirking, going, and if you try and drive back, I'll charge you. I recorded him doing this, and I think she had the video of that too. Literally, none of this has anything to do with the guilt of you driving without a licence. Element to prove only that you knew you had no licence and you drove, which you did. And refusing to provide a breath test, which you did. We have never denied their behaviour as being unacceptable and unprofessional, and as I've said, reaching 8 to 10 times now, that their behaviour will be raised in court. Now, she had mentioned it once after court, and she hasn't even attempted to raise any of this. She should have put an adjournment forward and put this together properly. I've seen some notes where this was in there, but also trying to say I'm bipolar, which is a pathetic excuse. That their behaviour will be raised in court and will be used as mitigation of penalty. Now, this is a confusing system because police behave badly, they get less penalty. What about I'd prefer them being punished. That's sort of what this world works on, right? I'm getting punished for asking a question. They've done something bad. Hopefully, you'd think they'd get punished. But, sorry again, James, but as I've seen with what you've explained, it seems to be very hard to hold people accountable for poor actions. Mitigation of plenty of their actions do not make you not guilty of what you chose to do. If I wanted riddles, I would have just ended it at our 30 minutes of discussion, and I wouldn't have hired this clown, Zoe. Mind you, this is not even getting into the fact she rocked up dressed like like she was going to a nightclub, not representing a client. The actions do not make you not guilty of what you chose to do. They mitigate and hopefully lessen the penalty because they contributed to the situation by acting poorly. So, write off all their unprofessionalism, falsifying charges, and everything like that as acting poorly, huh? Would any court other than a magistrate's court acknowledge the against me charges? Yeah, see. Because I was asking this because I honestly felt this deserves to go to a high court. The question if the police should have the right to do this. I will need my files returned. Yeah, this was because I realised I was at a dead end. Pretty sure. And this is still 13th of April the next day. I sort of thought about it. From what I know, Mum had gone to hit my dad up for more money. I said to my dad, don't pay another cent. Don't give any money to Zoe. Because, Zoe was trying to say by now that the bill was needing to be up to $8,000. They'd need up to $8,000 to represent this. So, I'll need my files returned as I will require them to seek further advice through legal aid. And I believe they can take the same path as your firm has indicated, and my parents will not be lumped with a huge bill. Your firm was hired because you said you could fight the charges, no other reason. Had you have stated the position you have stated, intend to take your firm. If you had have stated the position you have stated, intend to take your firm would never have been hired. Basically, if she had have stated what she's saying in their path, that this is how they would handle it, I wouldn't have even spoken any further with their firm. To take your firm would never have been hired in the first place. While I have been unable to make outgoing calls, I have stated you can call me to discuss this, yet you have insisted on obtaining information through my mother. Yeah, totally avoiding me, because whatever game she starts to unravel here. Could I also inquire as to why you had my trial moved down to Melbourne? Stuart, I chose not to respond to you on Friday, as I was not going to have you commandeer my weekend with your righteous and incorrect comments. Let me get things straight. See, we both have our issues. Phones are fun. I'm sure you've had the same problem, James. Let me get some things straight with you. 1, we were not hired by you, but by your mother and paid by them, because you had made it clear until that you were incapable of doing it. Made it clear until then that you were incapable of doing it yourself. Your mother passed information on about your situation, which was based solely on the story you told her. No, she's basing this off, my mother has some issues, and my mum was just asked to speak to a lawyer. The lawyer this should have been clarified a lot earlier, and it would have been clarified by Zoe talking to me instead of taking this backhanded game, which was based solely on the story you told her, and God knows what my mum said, because she wasn't there for any court appearances, because she's just keeps herself drugged up and asleep half the time, which when listening to the recordings were entirely false and misleading. How? No, because you're on my side when you thought I was still going to stay with you as a client, and when I've said no client, now I'm misleading and lying. You reiterated all the stories about your situation which were embellished and misleading. No. only because you're being fired now, right? Alleging certain things happened the first night which did not. I don't know what she's referring to there, but everything I sort of raised had happened. We were not hired to go down swinging, to plead not guilty under any circumstances. We were hired to defend you, as per the agreement states, and to keep you out of jail. We're still doing this, and a word of advice would be to stop being so antagonistic to everyone around you who is trying to help. No, you're trying to just get yourself paid, Zoe. That's what was peeving me about this. You want the jail term removed. 3 months jail for asking a police officer what the reading was. That's all I'm going to say. And everything else that followed that they tried to build up to create a case. You want the jail terms removed and the driving sentence reduced. And that is what we are doing. At no stage do you have the right to demand files or money back on the grounds you have stated, because unfortunately the person who has been in breach here is you, for telling misleading accounts of events. They weren't misleading prior to me saying, I'm done with you, and I think this is after I sent her an email stating that, I believe $600 for a court appearance was fair, but I'm not happy with what she's done, and I don't want to continue with her, because obviously Ahmed didn't do any moves to finish up. Showed no acknowledgement. I never received a letter off Ahmed too. That's point 5. I and we have been in communication with your mother because she had been facilitating the case thus far. That makes no sense, because I'm perfectly sane and capable of talking for myself, and Zoe knows that and avoided me. You spoke to me on a number of occasions, and your allegations that we hadn't spoken are absolutely ridiculous. Prove it. Get the phone calls where you've spoken to me, because I haven't really called you, Zoe. I've tried to call you and got answer phones, and sorry, I was at the gym. Whenever you required to speak with us, it happened. No, it did not. She kept speaking with my mum. The approach we had to take on your case was not communicated to your liking because you failed to arrive on time for court whatsoever. I even discussed this with you on the day and confirmed the exact approach, and you agreed before we parted ways. I don't have a choice. She's already gone in court and done it. So I don't get what that's about. Our approach, we stated, was never changed. We said we would defend the severity of the penalties placed on... See, didn't speak to me about any of this. Placed on your... and defend how you've been treated and dealt with by the police. You are obsessed with something that is not real, and you are now obstructing us and yourself from getting a positive result. You do not get to dictate an engagement based on your delusion when it was your own misleading and deceptive statements that have led you to any kind of misunderstanding. Say, I'm not sure where she's going off now. Your mother has expressed to me her discontent with your actions. See, this was another thing. She was calling my mum and going, Stuart's fired us. You can't do this. So, and this is stupid. Like, I'd spoke to Ahmed on the 12th. This is like 4 days later. She's been calling my mum and cracking it because what I found out was in some of my material return, there was some paperwork from them they must have left in there. I actually got something of a piece of paper that resembled case notes. That's in the file. But there was a whole heap of stuff on Google Ads. Plus, she went on a holiday. She would have been mid-dealing with my case the period she's on a holiday. So why take on a case when you're planning a holiday and you don't want to be bothered? 9. Your mother has expressed to me her discontent with your actions and is pleading that you will allow us to do our work to prevent you from going to prison. 10. The case was moved to Melbourne to be seen before a better range of judges that you have not appeared before, in agreeable and compliance with your family's direction, who she didn't speak with, who agreed that yes, it would be better to get out of that area, and also advised that you had wanted this. You could have just adjourned the case. It could still be taken out of area later, but you could have adjourned it. The adjourning it and taking it out of area meant automatic guilty plea. She just rushed this through and to do the easiest job area, and also advised that you had wanted this. Again, since you failed to arrive, I had a phone with me. That's the dumb bit here. My mum spoke to me 10 minutes before I got there on the phone, and they just continued ahead without me. And I said, just wait, because we got held up. So they were well aware what was going on. Failed to arrive on time, as perhaps you believe you are more important than the court system. No, I just believe in safe driving, and I can't sit there hassling Amanda to go faster just because I'm running late for an arbitrary appointment. The courts have to show some reasoning at some point. You weren't able to confirm this. So I don't know if that's an excuse, a justification, or what she's done there on that bit going over it. She got my family's agreement, then it was my agreement, and then everyone agreed that it was me, and that's what I wanted. And I wasn't there to confirm this. Well, you know, a phone call's not hard for what you're getting paid. $3,000 for one court appearance and avoiding a heap of phone calls. If you still desire to cease the engagement, that's no problem, and you will be billed for the work and attendance already performed, and some funds returned. Never been sent a bill despite multiple requests. Warned to your mother and father, and returned, part of the money will be returned to your mother and father, and you can start from scratch again. You are more than welcome to do this. However, I feel very sorry for your mother, who is trying to do everything she can for you, and you are making it impossible to achieve a positive result for you, and will have wasted her money thus far to start from scratch again. Please advise in a yes or no if you are proceeding, or in a yes or no if you are proceeding, or no, you would like the files back, and we will send you the bill of costs calculated up until today. So this is a pain in the ass. No. And we will send you a bill of costs calculated up until today in place of the original fee. Because she had $3,000 sitting in her account here. No. Meaning I don't want her. And that was on the 16th of April. 29th of April. Hi Zoe, I was wondering what was happening with my paperwork. Stuart, I have been overseas. Your paperwork would have been posted back to the address your mother requested. I spoke to my mum. This is while I was still talking to her before this got too crazy. My mother has stated that you have never sent a bill, and to date you have chosen to ignore my requests. Your handling of my case was nothing short of outright incompetent. I would seek a reason as to why you did not adhere to the conditions of your own contract. Stuart, say this started an argument. I was just highlighting she hadn't followed something on her contract. I'd have to get it out specifically to mark what it was, but it was to do with terminations, and what she was saying herself with, she'd be refunding the money and returning my files. This is like a reasonable amount of time, a couple of weeks. Unfortunately, the only behaviour that has been incompetent here is yours. I'm not the one pretending to be a lawyer. Sorry, James, bit of a joke for me. Your mother is ashamed of your behaviour and has clearly stated this. Has asked clearly. I'm not sure. The contract was also never with you, and the payment was not made by you, nor the instruction. Your refusal to follow any advice whatsoever falls on your head, and we attended and ran your case for as long as we could until once again were adamant that you were somehow knew better than the law. No, I don't know better than the law. I'm just saying what they're doing is unlawful and wrong, and I think it should be looked at, and you've wasted my time. Like you did with the police. The police don't even seem to know their own laws and policies. That's the funny bit that I've gotten out of this. Any further attempts by you will result in a claim by us invoicing you for the full amount billed. I don't know what she hasn't billed anything or sent anything. If you would like a bill, and we will pursue you. See, now she turned to threatening me. I'm trying to request reasonable, my information back here. We will pursue you and your mother for the full amount, which, before she was saying she owed money. Now it's turned into costs because she's been on holidays. You are insolent, rude, condescending, and also incapable of existing as a respectful human being, and will not be we will not be engaging with you any further. All I've asked for is my information back. Any further contact will be harassment and will not be tolerated. Any attempt to slander us will be defamation, and we will sue you as necessary. Yep, this is totally necessary response because I just want my stuff back. And she sent another message, which was, I think, just after it. It's at 11:22. Yeah, I copped her rant. You also have zero competence or awareness as to how contract law, which was law, I think, works, as you rescinded the contract and were in breach, and thus it is no longer in effect. Good day. That is a poor excuse for not providing a bill. As for defamation, that would only apply if my claims were false, so which they are not. You are low lives, and that would explain why you targeted my mother. I will proceed with taking action against you, as I will take this as your final response. Targeted. Yeah, she shouldn't. See, this is the whole bit. She should have been speaking to me, not my mum, and using my mum as, go give us money. Well, targeted, you're unstable, Stu, and your mother isn't talking to you. You have no grounds. We represented you, and you are not stable, unfortunately. This was all happening while I was in the hospital. I was undergoing a second set of surgeries on my kidney. Zoe was aware of all this hospital stuff going on while the police were being jerks too, but didn't bring any of that up. Tried to go on this whole bipolar thing. And plus, Amanda was not well, the kid's mum. We provided your mother with a breakdown, but since you've also cut her off, now I've asked my mum, my mum's still been insistent, but since you've cut her off, as you seem to be unstable and in hospital, she advises, please advise where you'd like the bill sent to you, so you can stop your insane accusations. Well, they're not insane accusations. I asked you for a bill and paperwork, and this is now in friggin' September. That was back in April. I think this is fair and reasonable enough. This was my last response to her, which was 24 Mill Street, Hayfield. You could even email it, because she has my email address. It would be even quicker. Thanks. I just wanted an end to this, and I hoped And that was it. That's the last I heard from Zoe. It was back in September 2018. Then I've ended up coming through you guys and getting run around in circles. I did have a conversation, the recording of the conversation with Harry. Obviously, James, as you would understand, I've become a little paranoid in the world, and I like to keep track and record of everything, especially my phone conversations with anyone in legal professions and that. I've lost a hard drive. I had phone conversations with Zoe, and there were none the more enlightening than the text messages I'm getting there. She totally avoided everything. Oh yeah, forgot. We're at 45 minutes and we haven't even got to Ahmed. Where's Ahmed? He was down here somewhere. That's Daniel Cash, because I tried to get answers out of him, and I got a 5-minute conversation where he goes, oh, well, I did what I could, and disappeared. You see, that was Jenny sending me statements. Rod Connolly, who I was trying to talk to about the time that Zoe came in interfering. Yeah, he's 17th of April, and because of Mum doing what she did. Oh no, you can't have two lawyers running at once, can you? Oh, here's Ahmed. Now, this was immediately after Ahmed had called me a vigilante. On the 12th of April. And he spoke to me for about 10 minutes. And for the first, 13 minutes. And for the first 3 or so minutes, he had his secretary, the secretary that kept doing all the phone calls with when they did their phone calls. They had her speaking to me, and I could hear him talking in the background. I said, is that Ahmed in the background, and can I just speak to Ahmed? And then he was like, she goes, I'll just ask. And then he went, yes, and spoke to me. Called me a vigilante and God knows what. Because this was, of course, after they've already gone into court and decided what they're doing. So they're saying one thing to me and then another. I've been treated wrong, but I'm a vigilante for asking a question like, what reading did you obtain? Because I think that's a reasonable question. Could I inquire as to what the current fees amount to for the services provided, and would it be possible to forward a copy with the letter you are sending? Because this is what me and Ahmed discussed. I said, well, can you put what you've just said in writing and send it through and return my paperwork? Because I expressed to him I was quite disappointed with what he said. I said, I don't want you defending me if you consider me a vigilante. That seems a bit off. Why would you defend me if you think I'm a bad person then? Yeah, so we'll send it with the advice. Never received off of Ahmed, and I don't believe I've got that anywhere. And this was just a statement to Ahmed, 5:31 p.m. I do not understand why we could not have had this the conversation we just had prior to your firm taking on the case against me. That would have made sense, because they would have said, look, this is the way we'd do this and that, and I'd go, look, that's, no. We're entitled to a choice. I just don't like the fact my dad got rotted out of money by my mum saying she had my consent, and this went to Zoe, and I don't think Zoe did her job in actually representing me if she's following my mother's instructions and such. But yeah, despite everything that went on, the incompetence of the officer, that just all gets ignored, and I'm unstable. So, yeah, I don't know. It's your opinion, James, but I brought this forward because I think it should be highlighted. Things need to change, and you've set me on a path for VCAT. Hopefully, if I can get the money together for that, that can work. But, it seems to be no one wants to hold these people in account yet. There's an endless amount of money to drag me through court, try and sentence me to 3 months jail over this asking an officer a question. The whole loss of license was essentially brought about because I refused to go to a station with him, and that was only because I'd asked him what's the reading. They've got a reading there, and he goes, I don't have to tell you that. And that was his only answer. That doesn't seem reasonable to me. And the police can try and, rationalise everything they like. You can't just drag everyone to a station for no reason. And I was driving because I was the safe driver. I hadn't been drinking for 3 odd hours. In the video, I said, I might have had a drink about an hour ago, but I was being, off the top of my head, making an estimation. But we all have our moments, we all mess up words and that, and to start saying just because you mess up one word, an officer has a right to take your rights away. I asked him a reasonable question, but yeah, you're not a lawyer dealing with that bit, but I felt this case deserved more merit. People shouldn't, these devices are there for a reason, to provide justification. And from what I know, the police don't like showing you the reading because, as a senior officer explained to me, and I've got that recorded and up on YouTube, any indication, like even if it was 0.001, the officer then has the right to ask you to a station. So I don't know what your opinion is on that, but we're all allowed our opinions. But apparently some clowns have made that law. I guess my whole point is that Ahmed, Zoe, DDD should have spoken to me at the very start, shouldn't have avoided me for like a week, then, get me to send out paperwork, try and act like they were doing some kind of work. They wasted my time. They caused me a lot of grief, and they caused me, like, basically to end up getting a week's jail still at the end of it. I don't know, how would you like going to jail for asking a question? Sorry, I just asked you a question. Can I go to jail for that, James? No. I hope you're well, and hopefully sanity can return to your life with the lifting of restrictions, because sometimes, you can miss work. People don't believe it or not. Hope you're well. Thank you. Sorry this took so long. I think this was the only way I could go through getting the text messages off my phone. As you can see, lots of busy stuff. This is funny about the most recent case with Melbourne Courts, Victoria. Just something to share with you about the inadequacies of our system. They sent me messages every time I had to go to court. Now, for this one with the Section 3A they're trying to do against me at the minute for recording in court while I was self-represented to keep record, and I caught the police out lying, and the magistrate let them off with it and struck the charges after they'd been brought to court and tried to trial them against me. So striking, I don't know how striking charges goes once you've already commissioned them to trial. They should have been struck before they commenced the trial, but he sought to ask the officer, let the officer try and lie. The officer messed up. The judge couldn't allow for that and kind of just decided to get rid of it all. And that was after coaching the officer, trying to help his story along. So I found it amusing, but because I recorded them, they sent me another court date. Now the funny bit was I was receiving these. There we go, 18th of February, Melbourne Courts, you have a hearing on the 20th, see? So they're giving me a couple of days' notice. When they decided, Michael Cook, who's the prosecutor that brought false charges against me and knows that I wanted to take a move against him, when they realised I wanted the video back, they decided to swiftly put charges against me. Then didn't mail them through like they said they would, insisted I had to pick them up, which I said I couldn't because, again, I was in and out of hospital and I have no licence. To end up receiving them less than a week before court. And it was my choice not to open them because I'm like, I can't acknowledge them unless I've got a lawyer. I'd rather have a lawyer open this for me. And I had to wait for the charges to go to a lawyer because no lawyers would speak to me till I'd receive charges anyway. So I got them a week prior to court, and I was in the middle of chasing up lawyers and never got a text to let me know a court date or anything. And apparently I missed my court date. So just a bit of info now is that I've been on a warrant for over a year and a half because they want to delete the evidence. They want to take me to court under Section 3A. This is a lot of stress for a person to go through. I'm surprised I haven't necked myself yet, but it's not really in my nature to do stuff like that. I don't get why people give up. I can understand to some degree with all of this that I'm going through, God. But, pray it never happens to you, mate. I hope you keep well. And I hope this video at least can go on file so people can see that's Zoe Davis and she's got a bad attitude, really. This could have all been avoided by not taking on a case you didn't believe in. Okay, thanks again. Sorry, I'm rambling.